I was once told that a great woodworker still makes mistakes. They just know how to hide them well. Well, we are going to put that theory to the test in this video because I made so many mistakes, I began to feel like a bit of an imposter.
What the f? We're not good. Pretty major problem. Huge gap just popped up right here.
This time I'm going to be attempting to make a high-end dining table from cheap construction lumber, and I hear what you're saying. This sounds like another clickbait gimmick video about turning $300 in lumber into a $10,000 table, but there are bigger reasons why this project is being made out of 4x4 Douglas fir. The main reason is the design itself. The tabletop is going to be a beefy upside down pyramid, which is about 6 inches thick at its max. So choosing lightweight Douglas fir construction lumber is a practical decision. It's going to reduce weight by approximately 50% compared to maple and keep the tabletop weight under 200 pounds, which is manageable for 2 adults to move. There's also the consideration that I drew this design up in Fusion 360 without any consideration as to how I would actually do the odd joinery that's going to be needed to put it together. If you're a woodworker, you'll immediately notice that there are no right angles. We're making joints at 70, 78 degrees, lots of weird stuff going on, which probably means that I'm gonna screw up quite a bit as I figure this thing out. And it's a lot better to screw up on the $12 4x4s than solid maple, which probably would have been about $3,000 or $4,000 for a table this size. So at this point, we're gluing up a second panel of 4x4s. And the idea here is to glue these two 4x4 panels together to get this stair-step 6.5 inch thick block that we can cut our upside down pyramid tabletop from. But before we can stack and glue those panels, we got to do a bit of processing to make sure they're perfectly flat for the glue up. I start by using a scraper and sanding a bit, then we carry the large panel into the CNC to get it flat.
Okay, not too bad. And we are good. But that is one hunk of wood right there. So we flattened one of the layers on the CNC, but I always get questions about how can I do this if I don't have a CNC. I heard the Rockler has a new slab flattening jig. You just need to use it with a router. So we're gonna head out to the burbs, hit up the Rockler store, see if we can pick up one of those slab flattening jigs. All right, shopping fun. So right away, got the featured item here, the slab flattening jig, and we'll look at it more once we get the big one, but this is the smaller version. This is the 8-foot long bad boy. It's beefy. I won't even fit in the cart. All right, we're just gonna go throw this by checkout and then go get the rest of the stuff we need. And while we're here, I think I need a new miter saw, so we're gonna look for that. Also, have an idea for a little feature on your table. What do you think can be like kind of a blonder, lighter top, but doing a little Lazy Susan inlaid in the actual table? Thinking like contrasting, we got some Paduke. This African mahogany is beautiful. You can't go wrong with a walnut.
Let's go with the mahogany.
That's pretty nice. It feels very beefy. I only live once. I think I'm gonna grab one of these bad boys as well while we're here. I feel like I need some more of these parallel clamps. Let's get a couple more 36 inch because we need to do multiple glue ups. Whoop, that's dangerous. 4 more of these is gonna make our life way easier. So we got these rails set up here. Screw those down to a flat surface here, and then it's a simple matter of flattening those glue ups. That's right. All right. feels almost like you're weightless, like you're floating on an air hockey table. And to clamp these two together while the glue up's going on, we got to get a little bit clever. We're going to stair step up a couple scrap pieces of wood on top of that to act as cauls to make sure there's pressure points in the middle, and loop some ratchet straps around the table. Hopefully that'll get it all glued down okay. Maybe some folks in the comments will have suggestions on how I could have done this better. At this point, it's done. Here's hoping. We'll come back tomorrow and see how solid it feels. We have a pretty major problem. There's a huge gap. It just popped up right here. You can see it didn't glue down, but it's like 75% glued. The other sides are all fine. I gotta go and think. Back in the shop, the best I can come up with is just, I'm gonna use a syringe to inject some resin underneath there and try to fill the gap as best I can. As long as it holds and it carves, we should be fine. Yeah, let's cross your fingers this works, because if this doesn't, then yeah, we've just got a worthless hunk of wood if this doesn't work. If you have anything negative to say about this, hold on for a minute, because yes, there are some concerns I have with this, but I have some ideas. We'll get to those when we get there. The resin is all set up. Cautiously optimistic that we were able to get enough in there to hold it in place. The only thing now left to do is hope that I did everything right with the cutting pass on the computer. This is only the second time now that I've ever done the 3D carving in wood. Here goes nothing. Man, this project just keeps killing me. If you're sitting at home, you're probably gonna be like, oh, you're an idiot. What were you thinking? This wood is very stringy. Strings like this keep getting clogged right in the dust collection. I'm having to take another dust collector, vacuum that. I was vacuuming it, got distracted by something, and I dropped this. It fell here, it got stuck in that, and it just ate right into the middle of the thing. It actually moved this whole thing, and we got a big cut in the middle. I think we're gonna have to cut a sliver of wood to kind of patch in there, but we're gonna do it after we finish the roughing pass. So we're just gonna hit the button and see if it works, see where we're at.
So you might be thinking, that tear out looks really horrible right there, but it's actually what I was expecting. The epoxy I injected only went so far in under the top panel, and then there was just an air gap left where it didn't glue properly. But that epoxy I injected in created a wall that then allowed me to come back with more epoxy and fill that space in so that we've got a solid structure. And I know it looks nasty, but like I said, I've got a plan, and by the end of this, you won't be able to tell that there was any blowout or patching going on here. So let's turn our attention to fixing the other F up where the bit slammed into the side of the table. To do this, I just cut a couple slices of Douglas fir and glued those into that slot that was created by the bit. After the glue dried overnight, I came back, flush cut and sanded the patch, and was ready to get started. And this is the point where this project truly became a comedy of errors.
Oh, what the son of a...
I'm hoping this is kind of like reality TV. You watch me F up and just generally feel better about yourselves in comparison. The good news is that I know how to patch up this mistake, so I just kept forging ahead to finish everything off before that patch. As for why this happened again, it was something different this time. I turned the machine off the previous day, and when I turned it back on and told it to go to the spot where it left off, I assumed the machine would go across the workpiece and then down. Instead, it went down and then across and slammed into the workpiece like you saw. So bright side, I learned something for future projects here. And with things finally back on track, it's time to sit back and enjoy the satisfying finishing pass to make the pyramid shape.
Now's the time where we fix the epoxy mess that we made when the glue up didn't work properly. So the idea is just to cut a channel all the way around to basically hog out that section and then put some mahogany in there. So it's going to be an inlay that looks intentional and gets rid of the mucked up area. Hopefully it'll work all right.
With the cavity for the inlay routed, I think you can start to see the master plan for hiding the mess from the bad glue up. So next up, I moved into the shop to cut the mahogany inlay pieces. Why mahogany, you ask? Well, because this table is an engagement gift for cameraman Cam. He and his girlfriend Erin just moved into their first grown-up apartment. Everyone wish Cam luck in the comments. Hopefully she says yes and the table doesn't go to waste. Kidding aside though, I asked Cam what type of hardwood he'd like to do for the inlay, and he said he'd always wanted mahogany furniture because he knew it was really nice from Anchorman.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
You can't make this stuff up. Back to the build, the inlays needed to be trimmed down so that I could cut them flush in the last finishing pass on the CNC. And I just have to point out the irony here of a guy on top of a CNC machine using a hand plane to flush up some wood. To all the folks that think a CNC isn't real woodworking, well, let's see what you do with this project.
We got the finishing pass and the top's looking really good. Now we just have this excess material and we got to come and just basically cut out the edges of the top. As always, wish me luck. Let's do it.
We're gonna put the top aside for the second to make the legs. Now these are Japanese style legs, so we're gonna be trying to use that sort of timber framing style joinery without fasteners as much as we can. Caveat, we'll have to see about that because I've never seen anyone do sort of the Japanese style legs with the angles splayed out like this. They're usually right angles, which makes doing those joints without fasteners a lot easier. So first thing we're gonna do is make these two legs, and those are gonna be made by gluing up 4x4 panels and then cutting them out on the CNC the same way that we did with the panels for the top. Once the glue had dried, it was time to take the leg blanks to the CNC, except for one little problem.
Unfortunately, cameraman Cam has woken up with some nasty flu and can't come in today, so it's just me. So the adventure continues with this table because I got to try to move this massive thing, probably, I don't know, 150 pounds, all by myself. Figure something out.
So after that symphony of F-ups on the tabletop, I'm gonna go through the CNC part here and just note the difference here that we just cut out the 2D shape of the legs and we didn't go all the way through the wood because that's gonna make the upcoming steps with non-computer controlled tools much easier. Next up, the tricky step of cutting a perfect 20-degree bevel all the way across the top of the leg. What really made it tricky was the height of the wood. At 3¼ inch, the table saw didn't go all the way through, which meant I had to flip the wood over and use the cut lines in the cross-cut sled to line the second cut up perfectly with the first cut. And this is also the reason I didn't cut the legs out fully on the CNC, because I needed that straight edge on the panel, so I had a perpendicular reference against the back of the crosscut sled. In the past, knowing myself, I probably would have fully cut the legs out right away. It would have had no straight reference for cutting that bevel, but I've learned from past mistakes, and I can't make every mistake in this video.
Woo, that looks pretty good, right? You get a straight on angle there. I will take that.
Speaking of learning from past mistakes, I also made the leg blanks a little bit long. This way, if I messed up that bevel cut, I can simply redo it without making a leg too short, and then I could make the much easier straight cut at the other end of each leg to cut them to the right length. So now we can finally remove the material from the sides of the legs using the bandsaw to remove the bulk of it so we can flush trim the legs to their final dimensions. But don't think we're out of the water yet. Oh, no. There's still ample opportunity for me to screw this up.
Last time, I did flush routing on some soft wood like this. It almost destroyed the whole project. This time, I'm gonna take the belt sander and take off as much as we can to reduce any risk of it blowing out. This is a lot more fun than sanding, even if it's a little more work. We need to put a piece of block of wood here, but it's difficult to get that clamped. So we're just gonna try to use some painter's tape, and that's when we route this, gonna hopefully prevent it from blowing out. No, we're not good. It was about to blow the hell out, but I got it away before it actually ripped the whole chunk out, which means we can just sand that down. And softer wood, you can just get blowout so much easier. Next up here is we got to cut the feet that are going to run across the table base, and these are going to kind of sit in there at an angle. We're going to cut a 12-degree channel.
To make the 12-degree slope channel cut a little bit easier, I decided to 3D print some custom support pieces that will hold the 4x4s at exactly 12 degrees as they run through the table saw blade.
Little jig pieces here, and we'll just tape those jig pieces to the board, and then we can run it through with our crosscut sled, and that'll be our 12-degree cut.
Now, at the risk of sounding as old as I actually am, when I started YouTube 7 years ago, people in the woodworking community hated 3D printing. You would bring out the trolls en masse if you dared to use a 3D printer in a woodworking project. Fast forward to the present day, and there's so many times where I get comments suggesting that I should use a 3D printer. And to me, this is a fantastic thing. I'm glad people are opening up to digital fabrication because it really is amazing and allows you to do so many things that you really couldn't do before. We've still got some work on the channel because you can see when the legs lean back, the channel fits the front of the leg, but the back of the channel needs to be a bit wider to accommodate the taper and angle. So I used a shoulder plane and sanding block to carefully shape those compound taper sides. Now, even with the close-up, it's very difficult to see this subtle compound taper on video. So if you aren't a woodworker and or just hate geometry and feel a little lost right here, don't worry about it. Just know the leg didn't fit before and now it does. Next up, it's time to make the half-lap joints between the feet and the lower stretcher. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of getting sick of hearing myself talk. So I'll cue up a good tune and we can all sit back, relax, and enjoy some satisfying woodworking.
Before we go further, I want to take a quick second and talk about that trip to the Rockler Woodworking store. Now, it's kind of embarrassing, but I do so much online shopping these days, I totally forgot how much fun it can be to go to a brick and mortar store. If you're a woodworker, going to a Rockler store is like being a 10-year-old and walking into a Toys R Us. For those of you that remember that place. First stop in the store was the Rockler Innovation section. As a former patent attorney, there's just so many cool inventions and jigs to allow you to do complicated woodworking tasks more easily. There's juice groove jig, panel clamps, templates, and more. Seeing them and putting your hands on them just gives you so much inspiration for projects you want to try. Moving on to their power tool section, they've got a curated selection of tools that are designed for woodworking. You go to the big box store, a lot of the tools are designed more for construction, for rough framing, things like that. With the tools of the Rockler store, you get the accuracy and the precision you need, specifically for woodworking. And in the back of the store, they've got a great selection of lumber and live edge slabs. With jigs, tools, accessories, and lumber, Rockler is a true one-stop shop for woodworking. Plus, all the staff are woodworking enthusiasts who are super helpful and enthusiastic to help you find exactly what you need. And if you're new to woodworking or even just curious, Rockler stores also have classrooms with amazing classes to jumpstart your woodworking career. With classes teaching you how to turn a bowl or make a cutting board, for example. Now, of course, you could easily shop Rockler on their website, which I do quite frequently, but if you're into woodworking or just woodworking curious, I highly recommend a trip to your local Rockler store. Thanks to Rockler for sponsoring the video, and let's get back into it.
Before getting back to all the joinery, I decided to knock out an easy task to create the angled profile at the end of the legs and lower stretcher. Now in the original model, the ends of each leg were just a straight taper, but I was worried about the durability of those pointy ends, so I decided to change it up to the profile you see here. I'm curious what y'all think about this change. Not as cool, better, or you like them both the same.
One little issue though, because I'm clearly figuring this out as I go. These things aren't gonna fit because this notch is in the way. So we have to notch this out at exactly 12 degrees. I think I can do that on the table saw using a sled. We're just gonna try to do that right now. Hopefully it works. Hopefully we don't have to do this all over because that cross piece took way longer to get fitted perfectly than I expected.
Great success.
So if you haven't realized by now that I'm just figuring out the joinery as I go, I'm here to tell you, I'm making it up as I go. And while all three pieces fit together nicely, this clearly isn't gonna be a pressure fit joint. And I didn't see a great way to clamp it all together, so I decided to add some dominoes to help align the legs with the lower part of the base.
So it was kind of my goal to create this Japanese style base, which means no fasteners, no screws, no nails. However, after reviewing all the options, I think I may have to compromise a little bit on that goal. So what I think I'm gonna do is cheat a little bit. I'm gonna use some lag screws just to secure the stretcher from the back, and also gonna bring some lag screws through from the bottom. I think it's gonna look the same, and I know there's purists out there that are gonna be angry, but I think my design appetite was bigger than my woodworking stomach, if you know what I'm saying. That is rock solid there. These lag bolts, they're structural, so they're intended for like housing. I'm putting more pressure than that table's ever gonna put on it. I don't know if I need the stretcher. I think we do the stretcher. I think we do it. Now this thing is ridiculously rock solid. I know it's a little bit of a cheat. I hope this doesn't kill it for you guys, but end of the day, for me, mostly about design. Now we're gonna disassemble this thing, apply stain to everything. And actually, I take that back. I wanna put a chamfer on some of the edges on this base, and that needs to be done before we stain. So we're gonna do that, and then we'll get to the stain. While the stain is drying on the parts of the base, turn our attention back to the top.
Next, I'm going to show something which I actually probably did at 5 or 6 different points throughout the build, and that is filling the voids with epoxy. You often end up doing this 3 or 4 different times throughout a woodworking project like this. And I don't see many YouTube videos talking about that, but I think it's worth mentioning because it can often add days to a project waiting for multiple epoxy fills to cure overnight. All right, since Douglas fir is definitely a softer wood, I'm gonna actually give it a hardwood border, kind of some hardwood trim. We're gonna do like 1/2-inch mahogany. And since this is the mahogany that we picked up at the Rockler store and intended to use for that inlaid Lazy Susan idea, it's probably a good time to mention we're nixing that idea. Once I could see the tabletop coming together and everything about this design is just angular,
Having a big round circle in the middle of the table just didn't make sense from a design perspective, and it's only a 38-inch wide dining table, so you don't really need the Lazy Susan functionally. On the other hand, adding hardwood borders to this table made from softwood makes a ton of sense functionally. While Cam is definitely an old soul, he and Aaron are still only 24 years old. So let's be real here, this table's likely gonna see its fair share of beer pong and flip cup. And I'd like this table to last until Cam outgrows beer pong. Although, to be fair, I don't know if I've outgrown beer pong. Anyway, these mahogany borders are definitely gonna help with the durability of the table. Once the glue had dried on the mahogany trim, we flipped the table on its side so I could flush trim the mahogany on the top, and then put it back on the table so I could use a hand plane to continue the slope on the underside through the mahogany trim. And while I may currently be a bit of a hand tool hack, I am really starting to enjoy those moments during a project when I can use hand tools. It's just a really relaxing process. All right, it's time to get this bad boy assembled. At this point, the stain on the base had dried, so it's time for its permanent assembly. And since I'd already compromised on my traditional Japanese joinery goal by using those screws, I decided why not use some glue. To the average person, it won't make any difference because it's gonna look exactly the same. Although this project really has inspired me to keep practicing and maybe get to the point where I could make this table with true Japanese joinery. Next up, we brought the base over for the exciting moment where we start to see how the whole thing comes together. And that also means it's time to figure out how to attach the base to the top because I hadn't fully thought this through yet. And what I came up with was just a couple metal plates. So I cut those out of 3/8-inch steel plate, then drilled and countersunk holes so the plates could attach to the top of the legs and the bottom of the table. And of course, we added threaded inserts in the legs for a more secure attachment and so the table can be broken down to move it more easily. Now, since the bottom of the table has that upside down pyramid shape that is such a key design feature, I want these plates to be recessed flush against the bottom of the table so we don't break up that shape visually. So I got out my Shaper Origin, laid down some Shaper tape, and routed a couple cavities that'll allow the plates to recess into the tabletop with the bottom of the plates flush against the bottom of the table. After a quick test fit to make sure everything fit, I could mark the hole locations in the bottom of the table and add threaded inserts there as well. So finishing touch here for the holes that I made to attach the cross brace. So I've got mahogany here, got a DFM dowel plate. I'm just gonna make some 5/8-inch dowels. The mahogany is a nice little accent in the legs. There we go. And with that, we are so close to that end goal of applying the finish. I just had to give the bottom a final sand, flip it over, give the top edge a nice chamfer profile, and do the final sand on the top. We got everything done and it's time for finish. Very excited to see this all come together. Cam hasn't actually seen the whole thing put together yet, so hopefully he's gonna like it. I think he will, but we'll find out soon. Oh, look how pretty that is. That's the main issue. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay, and now I'm all my. So what do you think, Cam? Did I make your Anchorman dreams come true? All right. I would say that there were more mistakes made in this build than probably any other projects I've ever done, but I also potentially learned more. And I'm pretty darn happy with how the results came out. I'm curious what you guys think. I think it's gonna be a rock solid table for Cam and Aaron for years to come. And if you wanna see it delivered and in their place, I'll make a community post once we got this thing in Cam's place. I'll also be sharing on Instagram, so follow me there. Sub bell, you know all the good stuff. And now let's cue the beauty shots.